She was a bright college student who dreamed of a career in law.
She was going into criminal justice and ultimately wanted to become a lawyer.
He was an old flame that always got her heart racing.
They're friends with benefits.
Together, they reconnected in a way neither expected.
She was pregnant with this child. There was nothing that was planned.
She was getting together with the father of her child. She was very happy.
But a few short weeks shy of her due date,
Get out of the car!
a shocking abduction sent their fiery romance up in flames.
Get in there!
She feels lighter fluid being doused all over her, and then hears a striking of a match.
Next thing she knew, she was on fire. And she hears 2 gunshots. She feels a pain. She knows she's been shot.
In order to capture the assailant, police must enter a sweltering hothouse of lies, deceit, and unspeakable betrayal.
Ma, I've been kidnapped.
Who would ever contemplate harming a pregnant woman? Why would somebody do this in such cold blood?
May 26, 2012, Detroit, Michigan. In the early morning darkness, a frightened 22-year-old woman is fighting for her life. 9 months pregnant, LaTanya Bowman is engulfed in flames. Her first instinct is to try and extinguish the blaze, but as the fire consumes her, LaTanya remains motionless.
She was abducted, bound with duct tape, set on fire, and she heard 2 gunshots. Knowing that she was injured, possibly shot, she made the decision to play dead in an attempt to save her life and the life of her unborn child.
LaTanya's plan works. Believing she is dead, the monster responsible for this crime flees on foot. When the coast is clear, LaTanya puts out the fire and slowly crawls toward her car.
She's gone into survival mode. This guy leaves the keys in the vehicle. She realizes that and she jumps into the vehicle.
Despite her life-threatening injuries, LaTanya somehow finds her way to the home she shares with her mother.
Oh my God, what happened to you? Let's go to the hospital, move over.
As LaTanya is rushed into the emergency room, doctors are shocked by the severity of her wounds.
And she's got 2nd and 3rd degree burns, and she's shot. She is very seriously injured.
They weren't sure if she was going to survive, if the child was going to survive.
Hospital personnel contacts police and inform them there's been a crime. One so gruesome it turns the stomachs of even the most calloused investigators.
When it rises to the level where it makes a detective sort of raise his eyebrows, it's unusual. And this one was brutal.
Overnight, LaTanya's harrowing ordeal makes headlines across the country. Local police are feeling the heat. They need to solve this crime and solve it fast. But as investigators race to piece together the puzzle, an unimaginable picture begins to emerge. One of pure evil and a sucker punch expectant mother LaTanya Bowman never saw coming.
We think we've seen it all, but we're always amazed by what humans are capable of doing to another human.
Growing up in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, LaTanya Bowman knew early on what she wanted to do with her life.
She was studying criminal justice in school.
Well, she had that sort of vibrance about her, you know? She was young and hopeful, and, you know, she wasn't somebody out there that was working the streets.
A dedicated and popular student, by the time LaTanya turned 21, she was well on her way to fulfilling her dreams. She was a senior at a local community college and was on track to graduate ahead of schedule.
She had the whole world ahead of her. She was a hardworking college student and very dedicated to excelling.
And among her legion of friends, there was no one LaTanya enjoyed sharing her hopes and ambitions with more than close friend Jamal Rogers. LaTanya and Jamal had been tight since they first met in high school, nearly 6 years earlier.
Not bad, not bad, not bad.
She thinks that this guy is a great guy, and in fact, she told her mother that he's just the nicest guy she's ever met.
Tall, dark, and handsome, LaTanya had long harbored a soft spot in her heart for Jamal. In fact, their connection had never been strictly platonic.
They did pretty much have an on-again, off-again relationship. Both of them described it that way, or more like friends with benefits.
While their physical attraction for one another was undeniable, the two friends felt it best to keep their relationship an open one.
It was really a different kind of relationship. LaTanya had seen other people and has had Jamal, and they were both aware of that, but they would still get together and be intimate and enjoy each other's company.
But in the fall of 2011, LaTanya and Jamal's relationship took an unexpected turn.
Got some good news for you.
Oh, yeah? What's up?
I'm pregnant.
LaTanya wanted him to make the decision to be a part of this child's life, and I really think to be in her life as well. He's a good guy, he's a good friend, and I think she perhaps saw a future with him.
While LaTanya embraced the idea of parenthood, to her surprise, Jamal didn't share her enthusiasm.
Initially, Jamal was very reluctant to have the baby and initially wanted LaTanya to have an abortion.
You plan on keeping it?
Yes, Jamal, I plan on keeping it. Where did that come from?
I think when she got pregnant, Jamal kind of broke off contact for a while.
What? Jamal.
But by the time LaTanya reached her third trimester, Jamal had rekindled their relationship and was as excited about the baby as she was.
So what about Glendon?
Glendon? Gillespie.
No.
Come on, that's original. Come on, nobody's got that name.
They were discussing names for the baby. This was, getting very close, and they started to go out and see more of one another.
With their relationship back on track, the couple made plans for a date at a local drive-in theater.
Why don't we go to the movies or something? Let's go hit the drive-in or something.
The drive-in?
Yeah, we're not gonna have any time once the baby comes, so we might as well go live a little bit.
You got a point.
Exactly, don't I, baby?
In her eyes, she was getting together with the father of her child to talk through some issues that, of course, two expectant parents are gonna have to deal with.
On Friday, May 25th, 2012, LaTanya drove her SUV to the home Jamal shared with his mother. After picking him up, the two headed to the nearby city of Dearborn for a midnight showing at the drive-in. As they watched the film, the two reconnected in ways neither expected.
Baby, look. Now, you know I'm always here for you, all right?
Prove it. So I don't
Prove
believe you. I don't believe
What
it
I gotta
right
do
now.
to prove it, huh?
I don't know.
Come
You tell me.
Come here, girl.
They had sex there in the car at the drive-in.
For LaTanya and Jamal, this passionate encounter seemed to cement the rock-solid nature of their relationship. But little did they know that in a few short hours, their lives would take a horrific turn, leaving a young woman fighting for her life and a community desperate for answers.
All of a sudden, she can smell accelerant. And then she kind of hears a click. And the next thing she knows, she can hear crackling, and it's her hair that's on fire.
Let me see what you got.
LaTanya Bowman and Jamal Rogers had been friends since high school, but it didn't take long for the relationship to become more than mere friendship. In September of 2011, LaTanya became pregnant with Jamal's child. And after shaking off a case of cold feet, Jamal seemed ready to be a loving boyfriend and father.
They sort of rekindled their relationship, I guess, or at least were going to try.
The couple's love for each other seemed so intense that just a few weeks before their child was due, Jamal and LaTanya shared a heated tryst at a local drive-in.
They had sex there in the car, in the SUV at the drive-in that they had went to.
But just when it seemed the couple's relationship couldn't get any more perfect, the unthinkable happened. Early on May 26, 2012, just hours after her and Jamal's romantic evening at the drive-in, LaTanya was abducted from Jamal's garage by an unknown assailant. Bound and gagged, she was lit on fire, shot, and left for dead.
The crime that LaTanya Bowman was a victim of has to rank as one of the most heinous.
I think even for a city like Detroit, the nature of this crime was shocking.
Now, as LaTanya fights for her life and the life of her unborn child in the hospital, police begin to try and piece together what happened. But the key to cracking the case comes down to one important factor:
I needed to talk to the victim. I needed to hear what happened firsthand from her.
Shot in the shoulder and suffering from second and third degree burns, LaTonya has been transferred to the hospital trauma unit. But despite her life-threatening injuries, she's remained conscious throughout her ordeal.
LaTonya, I'm Detective Barnes. Just wanted to ask you a few questions if I could. LaTonya, I know you're hurting, but I'd like to go through the events of last night. Can you just start from the beginning and tell me what happened?
Visibly shaken, LaTonya lays out the frightening details of her abduction.
Jamal and I went to the drive-in, and I drove back home, and he said that he was gonna open the garage door.
Hey, right here. Let me go open up the garage so you can back in.
Okay.
According to LaTonya, Jamal opened the garage. Just as she parked the car, all hell broke loose.
While inside of the garage, an unknown person came up and grabbed her and held a gun to her head.
Get out of the car! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
LaTonya tells detectives she did her best to comply with her assailant's demands.
She's in no condition to fight, being 9 months pregnant, so she just complies with what the gunman asked her to do.
The tape didn't cover the bottom of her eyeglasses, so she was able to sort of see just glimpses of the skin on his wrist.
She never sees the person behind her, but her hands are tied up, her feet are bound, her mouth is taped, and she's thrown in the backseat of the vehicle.
Get in the car! I said get in there!
With LaTonya bound and blindfolded, her assailant jumped behind the wheel and took off.
The next thing I know, it felt like we were driving.
Everything happened so quickly, LaTonya isn't sure if Jamal is safe and sound inside the house or had also been attacked.
She's thinking to herself, whatever happened to Jamal, but even more importantly, what's happening to me? How do I protect my baby? How do I get out of this?
LaTonya claims her assailant drove for several minutes before stopping in what seemed to be a remote area. LaTonya hoped her nightmare was nearing an end. Unfortunately, things were about to get much worse.
The gunman had opened the door, and then she remembers feeling a liquid being poured on. She could smell a gassy substance. And she said next thing she knew, she was on fire.
As she feels her hair and her body catching fire, she rolls out of the car and begins rolling around frantically trying to put the fire out.
She described the smell of her burning hair, the crackling of her skin burning. It had to be a horrific set of circumstances for her to live through.
But as LaTonya attempted to extinguish the flames, she suddenly heard a loud pop.
She hears 2 gunshots, one of which strikes her. Believing that she'll be dead soon, she instinctively plays dead.
Miss Bowman performed an amazingly heroic act of having the strength while you're still on fire to be able to play dead. It is just an amazing thing given those horrific circumstances. And the assailant then walked away.
LaTonya tells detectives that once she was sure her abductor had fled the scene, she put out the flames and shook herself free from the duct tape binding her hands and feet.
I heard him run off. When I thought that he was gone, I crawled to the car.
She doesn't have her cell phone at the time that was taken by the gunman. She sees a gas station that she's familiar with. She goes and uses the phone there.
LaTonya doesn't call 911. She's less concerned with her own safety than she is her mother's.
Ma, I need for you to leave the house. I'm coming to get you.
She thinks her mother is next, and her mother's in grave danger. And somehow, even without her glasses, even in great pain, she manages to get to her mom's house.
Oh my God, what happened to you? Let's go to the hospital, move over.
Shocked by the sight of her daughter's condition, her mother jumped in the car and rushed LaTonya to the hospital.
It's incredible that she lived. This young woman was her own hero.
Police are astonished by LaTonya's chilling story. But just what could have prompted the attack? And why was LaTonya so gravely concerned about her mother's safety? Apparently, it wasn't the first time a threat had been made against their family.
She's worried about her mother because 2 weeks earlier, there was an incident where a man came to the door very early in the morning. Mom opens the door. Guy sticks a gun in Mom's face, pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. And he just kind of runs off.
Miss Bowman thought, oh my God, does this have anything to do with that incident? Does this have anything to do with my mother?
Judging by the timing of the two events, LaTonya can't help but fear the worst.
She believes the incident that happened at her house a few weeks earlier is related to what happened to her this evening.
We'll be in touch. Get some rest.
For detectives, LaTonya's statement provides the first break in the case. But before they can follow up on this new lead, they must answer an even more pressing question. Is the father of LaTonya Jamal Rogers alive and well? Or has he met a fate even worse than hers?
Where was Jamal? We needed to go find him.
In Detroit, a terrifying crime has taken place involving the unlikeliest of victims. 9 months pregnant, LaTonya Bowman was abducted, set on fire, and shot. Amazingly, LaTonya tricked her assailant into believing she was dead.
The whole time she's thinking about her baby. And that's what gave her the courage to play dead. It saves her life.
And after her attacker fled the scene, LaTonya made her way to the hospital, but not before checking on her mother to make sure she hadn't been targeted as well.
Mom, been kidnapped.
In speaking with detectives, LaTonya reveals that the assault might be related to a separate incident that occurred only a couple weeks earlier.
2 weeks prior to the attack, an unknown male showed up at LaTonya's mom's house. When she came to the door, he pointed a gun in her face and pulled the trigger. But the gun did not fire. The male then ran off.
Adding to the mystery is the fact that police aren't sure if LaTonya's attacker also went after Jamal, the father of her unborn child. While one team of officers conducts welfare checks at both LaTonya and Jamal's residences, others fan out across the city in an effort to determine the exact location of the vacant lot where the shooter abandoned LaTonya.
Well, the first thing you think of is this guy shoots somebody and then throws the gun in the street someplace and some 3-year-old finds it. It was a top priority to find that gun, the shell casings, anything we could find in relation to the crime.
But given that LaTonya was blindfolded during the attack, locating the crime scene proves easier said than done.
It was difficult for her to describe a lot of the things around her because it was dark.
So we drove around, hoping to find some evidence of the scene. We were unable to do that.
It's not long before detectives hit another roadblock. Hoping to establish a possible link between LaTonya's abduction and the earlier threat made on her family, detectives reach out to her mother, Angela Beatty.
So I understand from LaTonya that you had some sort of confrontation.
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago.
But not only is LaTonya's mother unable to ID the man who allegedly threatened her, she's unsure the two events are even related.
I don't really think it has anything to do with LaTonya at all. I just figured somebody might have just been mad.
LaTonya's mom worked for the city, so sometimes you're dealing with irate citizens, etc. And based on that, she felt it had nothing to do with what happened to LaTonya.
Absolutely not.
Just when it seems like the case has hit a dead end,
Barnes,
detectives receive some promising news from their fellow officers.
you have him there.
Jamal Rogers is alive and well.
Thank you for your time. We need to go.
Officers encountered him during the welfare check of his house, the same house where LaTonya was kidnapped. Detectives are eager to hear his version of the attack.
Jamal Rogers?
Yes.
Need to ask you some questions about LaTonya Bowman.
Surprisingly, Jamal's account of what happened couldn't be more different than LaTonya's.
Jamal said that they left the drive-in theater, came back to his house on Sherman, and parked at the curb.
She dropped you off here?
Yeah, she dropped me off. Yeah, we were out there at the curb, talked for about maybe 10 minutes or so. Then I got out and she drove off.
With Jamal's statement at odds with LaTonya's, Detectives wonder if Jamal might be withholding information.
You're sure she dropped you at the curb?
Yeah, positive.
That's when Jamal drops a bombshell.
Is there anybody here that can corroborate that?
Yeah, my mom and my girlfriend and my kids.
You have another girlfriend?
Yeah.
And not one, but 2 children.
This is a guy who's getting a little bit of action because he's got a girlfriend right here and a pregnant pal over here.
Given LaTonya's statement and Jamal's startling revelation, detectives can't help but wonder. Could Jamal's girlfriend have orchestrated LaTonya's abduction out of jealousy? And if so, is Jamal now trying to protect her?
We know that Jamal watched this whole incident happen in his garage. He knew more than he was letting on.
Hoping to get to the bottom of this mystery, detectives reach out to a number of Jamal's neighbors. They're hoping to glean additional information about the attack on LaTonya. They catch a break when someone in Jamal's neighborhood tells them they saw Jamal and LaTonya return home from the drive-in the night of the crime.
Apparently there's this character who lives in the neighborhood, and this guy had his eyes open, and he saw them go into that garage, backing into the garage with LaTonya.
With an eyewitness backing LaTonya's story, police decide to bring Jamal in for further questioning. Detectives press Jamal to explain why his version of events is so different than either LaTonya's or his neighbors.
He instructs LaTonya to pull into this detached garage from his home so they can finish what they supposedly started at the movie theater.
Jamal changes his story and says, yeah, they did pull into the garage.
So you're out of the car? Yes. So you had to close the garage door. She obviously didn't do it, right? Yes.
But before Jamal talks about what happened next, he suddenly has a change of heart.
I think I'll remember. You want a lawyer? Yeah.
Basically, lawyers up, clams up. That's it. He's done.
Jamal's sudden reluctance to talk raises more than a few red flags with detectives. They decide to hold him in county jail on suspicion of murder. But they're still uncertain whether Jamal's girlfriend could be personally involved. Interviewing her that day, detectives are stunned by what she tells them.
What can you tell me about LaTonya Bowman?
I really don't know that name.
I don't believe that either of the women knew of the other.
Okay, well, were you aware that Jamal was seeing Miss Bowman?
No, I was not.
The fact that Jamal's girlfriend has no idea he's been sleeping with LaTonya seemingly undermines any motive she might have to try and kill her. It also places Jamal alone at the top of the suspect list.
We didn't consider the current girlfriend a suspect, and we believed their relationship at that point didn't come into play.
Desperate for physical evidence, investigators turn their attention to LaTonya's SUV.
Her vehicle was seized, and inside the vehicle, there's some pieces of burned clothing, but there was also a roll of black Gorilla duct tape, which we believe that was the duct tape used by the gunman.
However, DNA tests conducted on both the clothing and duct tape failed to connect Jamal or anyone else to the crime. The case appears to be at a standstill.
The only thing I had going for me at the time was kind of a little bit of hope. I wanted Jamal Rogers to talk to me again.
A few hours later, Detective Barnes' hopes are realized when Jamal Rogers does a surprising about-face.
I almost started to move on to what's the next step going to be? How are we going to identify this other person if Jamal Rogers is not going to give him up? And I walked him all the way back to his cell, and just as I put him in his cell, he said, "Can we talk?"
What does Jamal want to say? He's already lied to investigators once. Would this time be any different? Or is Jamal about to provide detectives with a piece of information that will break the case wide open? On May 26, 2012, expectant mother LaTonya Bowman was kidnapped from inside the garage at the home of her boyfriend, Jamal Rogers. LaTonya was then lit on fire, shot, and left to die in a vacant lot.
So she's been on fire, and then she feels a gunshot. She decides to play dead.
Miraculously, LaTonya survived the terrible ordeal, and the subsequent investigation has led police to the father of her unborn child. Jamal Rogers.
We believe that he was complicit in this abduction and attempt murder.
While initially reluctant to cooperate with police, after being taken into custody, Jamal decides to talk.
He tells cops, "I know who did this."
For detectives, it's a much-needed break in the case.
I just told him that I'm not going to go sit down there and speak to you for 2 hours unless you're going to give me something, so you're going to have to give me a name. And he said, Antonio Valentine Mathis.
Antonio Mathis is no stranger to law enforcement.
He's been in jail, he's done some time, and he's just a really bad guy. And he also happens to be pals with Jamal Rogers. He's his roommate.
Jamal described their relationship, said they were like brothers. He'd allowed Antonio to watch his kids. He just trusted him that much.
According to Jamal, he'd recently confided in Antonio about some problems he was having with LaTanya, and his friend offered to lend a hand.
What'd you say to him? I said I didn't really want to have another baby. I don't want to have another baby, man. I can't deal with this, that kind of a thing. Yes. So he said, I could take care of it.
Jamal tells detectives he had no idea what Antonio meant when he said he could take care of it, and he was surprised to find Antonio in his garage when he and LaTanya returned home from the drive-in.
I did say something to him when I seen him jump into the car. I was just, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this about? And he's just like, I got you, don't worry about it.
Jamal insists Antonio acted on his own.
I didn't ask him to do it. I didn't ask him to do anything.
Jamal's position was that Antonio took this on his own accord and thought to himself, hey, why don't I help Jamal out and somehow help terminate the baby, get her upset or whatever.
Detectives are anxious to speak with Antonio Mathis. They search the neighborhood where he and Jamal live, but can't find him anywhere. At least not until an unexpected tip comes in.
We received a phone call. It was an anonymous phone call. I learned he was going back over the Sherman address. In fact, our officers were sitting on the crime scene. He was arrested.
Even with Antonio in custody, detectives' hopes of getting a confession are soon dashed.
When they got back at 1:30, you're in the garage. I never came back to the house that night. I came back to the house the next morning. He was lying about everything. I don't know.
Antonio denies any knowledge of this whole event. He says he just got pointed out as a guy that, because he had a record, he would be a good fall guy.
Antonio also claims he has an airtight alibi. He was with his girlfriend the night of the crime.
She's gonna be your alibi for the whole night. What's her name?
The assailant's alibi was a friend of his, Tanisha McCaddy. She picked him up at midnight and drove him to another girl's house. That girl, Crystal King, was with him at the time of the assault.
Investigators suspect Antonio's alibi is bogus. And after speaking with Crystal King and Tanisha McCaddy, that suspicion is justified.
The timeline that he gave us was totally inconsistent with what had actually happened, according to Tanisha McCaddy and his girlfriend.
Tanisha and Crystal both state that Antonio didn't hook up with them until the morning after the crime, which supports the theory that Antonio was the gunman who attacked LaTanya Bowman. But did Antonio act alone? Or did he and Jamal conspire to murder Jamal's pregnant girlfriend? In order to elicit more information from their two prime suspects, detectives make a bold play.
Cops are pretty clever. You know, they're gonna start playing these two guys against each other.
I thought we maybe would talk to Jamal again and see if maybe he'd give us a little bit more.
He claims he's innocent. Wasn't anywhere near you and LaTanya. And he's got an alibi and witnesses.
Man, he lying.
Jamal, you're gonna have to give me something concrete or I'm gonna have to let him go and you're gonna go down for the whole thing.
I was kind of acting a little mad at him. I told him, this is your last chance. You're gonna give me some evidence that I can corroborate, or that's it. We're done talking.
The two words Jamal utters next will lead detectives to the unlikeliest of locations. A location that will bring them one step closer to putting LaTanya's true attacker behind bars. Police Police now believe Jamal Rogers is responsible for the attempted murder of LaTanya Bowman, the mother of his unborn child. But Jamal insists he's innocent and pins the crime on his best friend and roommate.
Man, he lying.
He's gonna roll over on his buddy, this guy named Antonio Mathis.
Jamal claims that shortly before the attack on LaTanya, he made an offhand comment about not wanting another child. Unbeknownst to Jamal, Antonio took his comments seriously and without his knowledge, orchestrated the hit on Jamal's pregnant girlfriend. However, when Antonio was arrested, he claims no knowledge of the attack on LaTanya.
Antonio said he didn't do anything. It's all Jamal.
According to Antonio, he was with his girlfriend, Crystal King, and pal, Tanisa McCaddy, the night of the crime. But Crystal and Tanisa tell detectives that's simply not the case.
We knew we had the right guy. The question is, do we have enough to make it stick?
The other question is whether Antonio acted alone, as Jamal Rogers claims, or whether the two men conspired to attack LaTanya.
He's thrown you under the bus. He's going to do whatever he can to save his own ass right now. He already did. He already did. He told us he told you not to do anything to her. You know what that looks like? You went out and did this on your own.
In an effort to uncover the truth, detectives then decide to play Jamal and Antonio against each other.
Jamal, you're gonna have to give me something concrete, or I'm gonna have to let him go, and you're gonna go down for the whole thing.
Fearful of taking the fall for the crime all by himself, Jamal offers 2 words.
Jamal says,
Home Depot.
I drove him to Home Depot right before I went to go to the movies with LaTanya.
Operating off this information, detectives reach out to a nearby Home Depot. They are able to confirm that the gloves and duct tape found in LaTanya's car were indeed purchased there.
Home Depot was nice enough to provide us with the exact items that he purchased from their shelves. So we had SKU number for the duct tape. We had the exact type of Gorilla duct tape, the exact gloves he bought.
Detectives confront Antonio Mathis with this evidence, but Antonio remains adamant he had nothing to do with the crime.
But I guess he forgot. Home Depot has security cameras.
Police are confident that if the surveillance footage places Antonio at the store, they'll have enough probable cause to charge him with attempted murder. Detective John Barnes screens the security footage, but after 90 minutes, there's still no sign of their prime suspect.
You know, and Antonio hasn't come into the store, and I almost started thinking, what do we do now that we don't have this piece of evidence?
But just as he's about to give up, Detective Barnes finally hits pay dirt.
Right there, look.
And I think it was around 9:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the store closed. In walks Antonio Mathis. I knew right then that we'd locked Antonio Mathis into this.
There he goes. He's got the gloves and he's got the duct tape. Yep. That's what we've been looking for.
Even with this video evidence, detectives are still fairly confident that Antonio didn't act alone. They believe Jamal Rogers, already saddled with 2 young children, couldn't bear the thought of having to support another child with LaTanya. And when Antonio told Jamal he could make his problem go away, Jamal jumped at the offer.
I think that Antonio told Jamal, I can take care of this for you. And by take care, we know that means kill her and the baby, and the problem goes away.
On May 29, 2012, police officially charged Jamal Rogers and Antonio Mathis with unlawful imprisonment, assault with intent to commit murder, and conspiracy. News of Jamal's arrest adds insult to LaTanya's already devastating injuries.
I think she loved him, and she didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to believe that he was capable of something like this. And I could understand.
Ironically, the same day charges are filed against the 2 men, LaTanya gives birth to a healthy baby boy.
The baby is fine. Mom, LaTanya, is apparently recovering physically. This is an incredible story of courage and survival.
Over the next year, LaTanya also begins to heal emotionally as she waits for justice to be served.
She went through some tough times, and we weren't going to rest. Not from day one, not until this is over with, and we get the results that she deserves.
On May 22, 2013, the trial of Jamal Rogers and Antonio Mathis begins in a Macomb County courtroom. In their opening statement, prosecutors assert Jamal Rogers, not wanting to be a father again, asked his friend Antonio Mathis to kill his pregnant girlfriend, LaTanya Bowman.
Obviously, Mr. Mathis was supposed to kill Miss Bowman. She was totally blindsided by the violence that she was subjected to at both of their hands.
Prosecutors then lay out the evidence tying Antonio to the crime: the duct tape and the gloves found in LaTanya's SUV, as well as the security footage that shows Antonio Mathis purchasing them the night of the attack.
Having the Gorilla duct tape in that courtroom and being able to show them, this is what was bought and this is what we found in the car. And them actually seeing that purchase made, that was huge.
After presenting the physical evidence, prosecutors turn to their star witness, LaTanya Bowman. Everyone in the courtroom is mesmerized as she gives a blow-by-blow account of her nightmarish abduction.
She was very calm in her testimony, which is kind of typical of her actions throughout this ordeal. I think the jury was absolutely listening to every word that she said and were undoubtedly impacted.
On the stand, LaTanya admits she had a hard time believing that Jamal was involved in the crime, but she also refutes Jamal's claim that they had sex the night of the abduction.
She denied the sex at the drive-in theater. Jamal seemed to be totally baffled by that, why she's saying that. And, that was a big part of his case.
But not everything LaTanya testifies to bolsters the prosecution's case. Her inability to concretely identify her assailant is a boon for the defense.
She readily admitted that the defendant was shorter than the man that she felt had abducted her. She really didn't pinpoint my client as being the person that abducted her.
Beyond LaTanya's testimony, the defense also argues that Jamal and Antonio's DNA was never found on the gloves and duct tape, nor was there the usual paper trail left behind when one person solicits another to commit murder on their behalf.
We had shown that there was absolutely no financial things happening between Mr. Rogers and Mr. Mathis. There was no withdrawals or anything like that on Mr. Rogers' part. There was no deposits on top of Mr. Mathis like there normally might be if somebody's asking somebody to commit a crime.
Despite LaTanya's heroic turn on the stand, there seems to be nothing but some security footage linking Antonio to the crime and zero physical evidence implicating Jamal. A guilty verdict seems unlikely. But before the jury weighs in, the prosecution will unveil a surprise witness, one whose shocking testimony will be the deciding factor between two men walking free or being locked up for life. After an intense few days in the courtroom, the trial of Jamal Rogers and Antonio Mathis for the attempted murder of LaTanya Bowman is wrapping up. Armed with a security tape of Antonio purchasing items that were used in the crime, along with LaTanya's gripping testimony, the prosecution is feeling confident.
We were all of the mind that we presented the best case we could possibly present.
But defense attorneys argue there's simply no proof that their clients plotted any murder.
There's no actual concrete evidence of any sort that there was any kind of conspiracy between the people.
However, prosecutors still have one last witness on the docket, Antonio's friend, Tanisa McCaddy. On the stand, Tanisa reveals a detailed conversation she had with Antonio shortly after the attack on LaTanya.
McCaddy. She said he was unusually quiet. And she asked him what was wrong, and he didn't want to tell her. And he just said, nothing, but I need you to stay away from me for a while.
If I remember, the exact words may have been, we did some awful to a pregnant woman. So she did testify to that in court, and that certainly didn't sound good at all.
Well, this guy, Antonio Mathis, is a real brain surgeon. I mean, who actually does something like this? And then they talk about it and even brag about it. But that's what Antonio did, and that's what also helped police nail him to the wall.
But is it enough to convince the jury that both Antonio and Jamal were involved in the crime? After 3 hours of deliberations, the jury returns with their verdict. They find Jamal Rogers and Antonio Mathis guilty on all charges.
The first thing we all did is, after hearing guilty of all charges, is we all looked at Miss Bowman And we all went and hugged her.
2 months later, the two defendants are sentenced to life in prison. The judge has some particularly harsh words for Jamal.
Even though you did not like the match or
Wrists. Duncan chuckled, unfazed. Well, that's not a bad idea. Jimmy, property is booming. But no, I'm actually here checking if you still need an engine for that old tugboat your dad's fixing up. I think I might have found one for you over in Aberdeen. Jimmy crossed his arms. And will there be a finder's fee involved in this miraculous discovery? Of course, Duncan grinned, flashing white teeth. What am I? A charity. Before Jimmy could retort, a sharp, choked noise drew his attention across the room. Detective Constable Sandy Wilson was standing by his desk, his hand gripping the telephone receiver so tightly his knuckles were white. The young officer's face had drained of all color, leaving his freckles standing out starkly against pale skin. He looked like he was going to be sick. "Tea?" Craig asked, oblivious, holding up a mug. "Excuse me," Jimmy said, his police instincts instantly overriding the casual morning atmosphere. He crossed the room quickly. "Sandy, what is it?" Sandy stared at the wall, his eyes wide and unseeing. "I'm sorry, Sandy," the voice on the other end of the line was saying, faintly audible in the quiet room. "I didn't quite catch that." Jimmy gently placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Sandy, talk to me." Sandy slowly turned his head. His breath was shallow. It's my grandmother's croft, over on Bresse." "Mima?" Jimmy asked softly. Sandy swallowed hard, tears suddenly welling in his eyes. "I don't understand. My cousin Ronald just called. He was driving past. He said she's been shot." Sandy's voice broke into a jagged whisper. "She's dead, sir." The air in the station seemed to vanish. The banter, the talk of festivals and boat engines evaporated, replaced by the chilling, heavy silence of murder. Chapter 2: Contamination. Jimmy Perez's mind shifted gears with the smooth, cold precision of a well-oiled machine. Grief was a luxury they did not have time for right now. "Okay," Jimmy said, his voice low, steady, and utterly commanding. He took the phone from Sandy's trembling hand and placed it back on the cradle. Sandy, look at me. Sandy blinked, a tear tracking down his cheek. He looked impossibly young in that moment. What I want you to do, Jimmy instructed, making sure he maintained eye contact, grounding the young officer, is I want you to phone Billy on the landline and give him all the details. Every single thing Ronald told you. Do not leave anything out. Sandy nodded numbly. I'm going to get the inter-island ferry to Bressay. Jimmy continued, already shrugging his heavy coat back on. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You are going to go over there right now. You live closer to the ferry terminal. My dad, Sandy stammered. I need to tell my dad, Joseph. No, Jimmy said sharply. Your dad is a civilian. Right now, you are a police officer. You go to the croft. When you get there, you establish a perimeter. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Jimmy leaned in closer, his tone softening just a fraction, but the steel remained. Is there any sign of a break-in at the croft? Did Ronald say? He said there is some broken glass. The front door. Do you know if the neighbors heard anything? I don't know. Her nearest neighbor is miles away. There's just Ronald. His croft is just up the road. He passed by on his way back from the night shift, and she's just over the ridge. He saw the broken glass from the track. Jimmy processed the information. Bressay was sparsely populated. A shotgun blast in the middle of a storm might go entirely unnoticed. Could it have been an accident? Do you think a shotgun blast up close? Sandy shook his head, a look of profound sickness washing over him. No. I mean, Mima owns a gun, an old double barrel. She keeps it in the hall cupboard, but she wouldn't. We don't know what happened yet. Jimmy interrupted gently. Now listen to me carefully. Sandy, you get to that croft. What's the mobile signal like up there? Terrible. Comes and goes. You'll need to go up the hill behind the house to get a bar. Right. Okay. This is what I want you to do. I want you to use your radio or phone the hospital in Lerwick if you have to use the Crofts landline. But try not to contaminate anything. Get them to send an ambulance. Set up a common approach path for the medics and the forensics team. Put up a windshield if the weather is destroying evidence. Jimmy paused, searching Sandy's face. The boy was hungover, Jimmy realized with a flash of irritation. He could smell the stale alcohol, something sweet and cloying. You think you can handle that? Jimmy asked, his tone demanding a positive answer. Yeah, Sandy sniffed, wiping his nose with the back of his sleeve. Can I cover her up? The wind is awful today. No, Jimmy said, his voice flat. I'm sorry, Sandy. We need photographs. The scene has to remain exactly as it was found. Look, I know you were close to her, but we multifunction here. You're a detective today, not a grandson. Sandy nodded, his jaw tightening. He grabbed his coat and rushed out the door. Jimmy turned to Craig, who was already on the phone, organizing the crime scene investigators. Suddenly, Jimmy's mobile rang in his pocket. He pulled it out. The caller ID flashed, Tosh. DC Allison Tosh McIntosh was his newest transfer from the mainland. Brilliant, slightly chaotic, and currently supposed to be off duty. Inspector, Tosh's voice came through, bright and alert. Did I wake you? No, sir. I've been up for ages, Jimmy replied, his mind already on the ferry. Well, look, I could lose my signal at any moment on this crossing. I want you to get on the ferry to Bresse. Mima Wilson has been found dead. Shot. Shot? Tosh sounded taken aback. Gun violence in Shetland was incredibly rare. Understood. I'm on my way. Get here fast, Tosh, Jimmy said, stepping out of the station into the biting wind. And bring your game. This one is going to be messy. Chapter 3, Blood on the Heather. The ferry ride to Bresse took exactly 7 minutes, but to Jimmy Perez, it felt like hours. The gray waters of the Sound were choppy, the ferry rolling heavily over the swells. Jimmy stood on the open deck, ignoring the freezing spray, his eyes fixed on the approaching island. Bresse was a rugged, beautiful, and unforgiving place. Green hills rolled into dramatic cliffs that plummeted into the churning sea. Mima Wilson's croft sat isolated on a ridge, a lonely sentinel overlooking the water. By the time Jimmy's car navigated the narrow, winding single-track road and pulled up to the croft, the scene was already cordoned off with flapping blue and white police tape. The wind up here was vicious, tearing at Jimmy's clothes as he stepped out of the vehicle. He ducked under the tape and approached the small stone house. Sandy was standing near the front door, shivering violently, holding a digital camera. He looked 100 years older than he had that morning. Sandy, Jimmy said, his voice come amidst the roaring wind. Report. The gun hasn't been fired for years, sir, Sandy said, his teeth chattering. I checked the whole cupboard without touching anything. It's empty. Did Mima own this place? Jimmy asked, pulling on blue nitrile gloves. Yeah, the land's been in the family for generations. Outside, out the back. Sandy pointed a shaking finger. Has anyone called your dad? Yeah. And where's he now? At home, in Lerwick, Sandy said, looking down at his boots. I told him not to come down. Did not feel right breaking the news like that on the mobile. But I had to tell him to stay away. I was worried about contamination. No, you did the right thing, Jimmy reassured him. It was a heavy burden for a son to bear, telling his father that his mother had been murdered. Can you tell if anything's missing from the house? I don't think so, Sandy replied, his voice dull. Look, Mima's phone was unplugged. I put it back in to call the hospital, used a pen to push the jack. She didn't have anything to steal. She always lived alone. Her granddad died young. My granddad died years ago. She just had this land. Jimmy stepped carefully toward the front door. The glass panes were shattered, fragments scattered across the threshold like crushed ice. He stepped over them, entering the dimly lit hallway. The croft smelled of old peat smoke. lavender soap, and the sharp, unmistakable metallic tang of blood. Mima Wilson lay on her back in the narrow corridor. The shotgun blast had caught her square in the chest. It was a devastating wound. Jimmy forced himself to look at it objectively, shutting off the part of his brain that recognized this woman as the kindly lady who used to give Cassie boiled sweets at the county fair. The spread of the pellets suggested the shooter had been standing just outside the threshold, firing inward. Close range. Brutal. Intentional. What's the story with the dig? Jimmy called out over his shoulder to Sandy, desperate to shift the young man's focus away from the body. He had noticed the scarred earth and tarpaulins flapping wildly in the field just behind the croft. Archaeological team from Aberdeen Uni, Sandy answered, his voice echoing slightly in the stonehouse, led by a Professor Paul Berglund. They've been here for a few weeks. Jimmy crouched down, examining the floorboards around the body without touching them. Right. Take as many photos as you can, the body, the surrounding area, and inside the croft. Get the angles of the broken glass, and then email them to the pathology lab in Inverness. Do you think you can manage that? Of course, Sandy said, though he didn't move. Jimmy stood up and looked closely at his DC. Sandy's eyes were bloodshot, his skin sallow. You sure? Jimmy asked, his tone sharpening. Because your eyes look like piss holes in the snow. Sandy flinched. Sorry, sir. Late night. I thought I was off duty. We're never off duty here. Sandy, you still not got that yet. Don't worry. It happens to the best of us. Jimmy sighed, softening slightly. It's not that, is it? It's the shock. It's the Dutch chocolate vodka from last night, Sandy admitted miserably. I was drinking over in Lerwick. Right. Well, sober up fast. Go film your cousin Ronald, the one who found her. I've not met him. His mother and my mother were cousins, Sandy explained, adjusting the camera strap. He's taking his place on his family's pelagic trawler, the Cassandra. Yeah, she's a beauty. State of the art, Jimmy noted, filing the information away. Fishing in Shetland was big business, and pelagic trawlers were floating factories worth millions. Not like my old man's tugboat. I hear the Haldanes are worth a fortune. Is that right? They've got part of the fishing quota. They do okay. Sandy nodded. They're rich. Does that cause any problems between the families? Jimmy asked quietly, watching Sandy's reaction. Your family has the land. Their family has the money? Sandy bristled defensively. No tension. We're family. Jimmy didn't press it. Family in Shetland was a complicated web. Go take the photos, Sandy. Then I want you to go home. Be with your dad. He's going to need you. Chapter 4, The Alibi. Ronald Holdan was a mountain of a man, built like a brick outhouse with a thick red beard and hands the size of dinner plates. He stood outside his own croft, a mile down the road from Mima's, smoking a cigarette with trembling fingers. Jimmy approached him slowly, letting the man see him coming. Mr. Holdan, I'm De Perez. I'm sorry for your loss. Ronald took a drag of his cigarette, the tip glowing fiercely in the gloom. It's a bad business. Bloody awful. Who would do a thing like that to an old woman? You must be stunned, Jimmy said, his voice soothing but probing. But I'm going to have to ask you a few questions. You passed by the croft last night? Ronald grunted. I was just on my way home. I was drinking over in Lerwick, like I do most nights when I'm off shift. Drinking heavily? Look, I'm no long back from sea, Ronald said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. I don't know what to do with myself on land. Now get off my back. For goodness sake. It's my Andy lying dead up there. All right, take it easy. Jimmy placated him. Just walk me through your night. These days, the deep sea ships only port at the main island. So you were in Lerwick. I missed the last ferry back to Bresse. Had a wee nightcap at the pub. Which pub? The Kelly. I slept in my car at the terminal, then got the first ferry over this morning. That's when I drove past and saw the glass. Jimmy noted the timeline. It was plausible. but it lacked witnesses for the crucial hours. What about your wife, Anna? Was she at home alone all night? Ronald scowled. The baby was sleeping. Anna took the opportunity to join me in Lerwick for a bit earlier in the evening, but she came back early. My mom, Jackie, was here keeping an eye on the bairn. How long did Jackie stay? Half an hour. Anna said she came over to tell us about a piece of bone she found at the dig. Jimmy's interest piqued. The archaeological dig on Mima's land? Your mother volunteers there? She's actually quite excited about it. Found an old bone. Jimmy nodded slowly. Right. One last thing. Ronald, you hold a shotgun license, don't you? Ronald stiffened. Aye, for the rabbits. Has the gun been fired recently? I went out shooting rabbits after I got home last week. You often go out lamping with a spotlight. I'll need to take the gun. Now, if you don't mind, for testing, routine elimination. Ronald stared at him for a long moment, the hostility radiating off him in waves. Finally, he nodded sharply. Fine. It's in the lockbox. As Jimmy secured the weapon in the trunk of his car, Tosh pulled up in an unmarked police vehicle. She hopped out, pulling a beanie down over her ears against the cold. Boss, she greeted him. Forensics are on the ferry over. What have we got? Mima Wilson, late 70s. Shotgun blast to the chest at close range. Found by her nephew, Ronald Holdan, who conveniently missed his ferry last night and has no alibi. Jimmy briefed her rapidly. I want you to head over to the archaeological dig behind the croft. Find a Professor Paul Berglund and a student named Hattie James. See what they know. Apparently, Mima's sister found a bone yesterday, and people were excited about it. Tosh frowned. A bone? Animal or human? That's what you're going to find out, Jimmy said, and Tosh. Watch your step. The ground is saturated and tensions are high. Everyone on this island is related to the victim in one way or another. Chapter 5. The Pars Orbital. The archaeological dig was a scar of dark peat carved into the vibrant green of the hill. Tarpaulins flapped aggressively in the wind, anchored by heavy stones. Deep trenches had been meticulously dug, revealing layers of dark, rich soil and the gray stone foundations of what looked like an ancient longhouse. Tosh picked her way carefully across the muddy boards, her boots sinking into the muck. A young woman in a waterproof jacket and muddy trousers was sitting on a plastic crate near the main trench, her head in her hands. She looked up as Tosh approached. She had pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, and a striking brace on her teeth that glinted in the dull light. "Hattie James?" Tosh asked, flashing her badge. "I'm D.C. McIntosh. I need to ask you a few questions about Mima Wilson." Hattie let out a shuddering breath. "Oh, God. Oh, God. I know. It's awful." She pulled her coat tighter around herself. Tosh noticed it was an older, slightly frayed wool coat, far too big for her. "Is that Mima's coat?" Tosh asked gently. Hattie nodded, tears spilling over her lower lashes. "Yes, it was pouring down yesterday. Mima saw me shivering. She was like that, kind. She gave me the jacket, said I could keep it. That was very generous of her," Tosh said, her mind working quickly. "The killer had shot a woman wearing that coat in the dark. Could it be a case of mistaken identity? Was that the last time you saw her?" "No." Hattie wiped her nose. "No, I was with her last night." Tosh straightened up. "What time?" "I left the pub in Lerwick about 9. I caught the late ferry back to Bresse. I stopped in and had a quick cup of tea with her. She just seemed like her normal self." "Did she mention anyone coming to see her? Anyone she was worried about?" "No," Hattie said, her voice shaking. "But Mima was a bit funny at the dig earlier yesterday." "Funny how?" Hattie pointed to the deepest trench. "Sophie and I were working down there with Jackie. Jackie Holdan, Ronald's mother. She volunteers to help us sift. Mima turned up with some tea in a thermos just as Jackie found a piece of bone." "What kind of bone?" Hattie swallowed. I was hoping it was just a fragment of animal pottery or an animal bone. But I'm a paleoanthropology student. I know what I'm looking at. It was a pars orbital. Tosh raised an eyebrow, silently asking for translation. A piece of a human skull. Hattie clarified, her voice dropping to a whisper, right above the eye socket. And Mima saw it? Yes. She went pale. She dropped the thermos. It shattered everywhere. Hattie looked around the desolate landscape nervously. Maybe she didn't like the idea of living so close to the dead. I don't know. Tosh thanked the girl and headed back to her car to call Paris. A human skull found on the property on the same day the owner is murdered. In Shetland, there were no coincidences, only history coming back to bite you. Chapter 6, The Grieving Son. Jimmy Perez sat in the small, immaculate living room of Joseph Wilson's house in Lerwick. Joseph, Mima's son and Sandy's father, was a stark contrast to the rugged Ronald Holdan. Joseph was a neat, precise man who worked as an accountant. Right now, however, that precision was shattered. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands tightly clasped in his lap. Sandy stood behind him, a silent, protective shadow. I'm sorry for your loss, Joseph, Jimmy said softly. It's a hell of a thing to lose your mother like that. Joseph stared at the floral pattern on the rug. She wasn't an easy woman, Jimmy. You know that. It's not an argument in an empty room to say she was stubborn. But she was my mother. She did not deserve to die like a dog in the dark. No, she didn't, Jimmy agreed. Joseph, I have to ask, where were you last night? Joseph looked up, his face flashing with sudden anger. Are you asking if I shot my own mother? I'm asking everyone where they were. Jimmy replied evenly. It's procedure. Joseph deflated. I wasn't sure if you were in the station when I called. That's right. I was over at Lerwick, picking up some new nets for the boat. Missed the last ferry. Slept in the car at the harbor. Jimmy felt a prickle of unease. Ronald Holdan told me the exact same story. You both slept in your cars at the ferry terminal? Joseph hesitated. It happens. The ferry schedule is unforgiving. Did you see each other? No. It was dark, pouring rain. Jimmy turned his attention to Sandy. Sandy, you've got some leave due. I want you to stay with your dad, because he needs you. Sandy bristled, stepping forward. I want to help with the case, sir. I'm capable of more than making tea, if you'll give me a chance. I know you are. Sandy, Jimmy said, his voice firm. But it's difficult. It's a conflict of interest. Right now, your job is to get your dad to take stock of what might have been taken from the croft. Because we need to be sure it wasn't a burglary gone wrong. Jimmy stood up to leave. As he reached the door, he paused. Joseph, what's going to happen to the dig now? Mima's land. Joseph looked away. It looks like I'm going to have to close it down. Too many bad memories now. Will you put the place up for sale? Jimmy asked quietly. I know Duncan Hunter has been trying to get Mima to sell the land for years to build those luxury holiday cottages. She would never agree, Joseph whispered. Never. It was her life. But she's gone now, Jimmy pointed out gently, and the land is yours. Joseph didn't answer. He just buried his face in his hands and wept. Chapter 7. Shadows of the Shetland Bus. The Holden residence was a large, imposing stone house that spoke of generations of fishing wealth. Jimmy was shown into the drawing room by Jackie Holden, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s with immaculate hair and a posture that demanded respect. Sitting by the roaring fire was Andrew Holden, Ronald's grandfather and the patriarch of the family. He was frail, his skin like translucent parchment, wrapped in a heavy tartan blanket. Jackie, Jimmy nodded. Mr. Holden. Jimmy, isn't it? Andrew rasped, his voice sounding like dry leaves. I knew your mother when she was a girl. Ah, much the same. You still keep my old man on his toes. Trying to, sir. Jimmy smiled politely. He turned to Jackie. I heard you were wetting the baby's head yesterday evening. over at Ronald's. Better late than never, Jackie said briskly, offering him a seat. Have you any news yet about Nima? Not yet. I'm trying to piece the families together, just so that I understand this. You and Joseph's late wife were cousins. Am I right? Jackie nodded. Aye. But we're all connected in one way or another in Shetland, aren't we? One big happy family. Her tone suggested otherwise. Since all those incomers came to work at Sullenville Oil Terminal, you wouldn't know who was on the islands half the time. It's not safe anymore. Nobody likes to think the threat is local. Jimmy said carefully, but 9 times out of 10, victims know their killers. Jackie, you were at Anna and Ronald's house last night. Did you notice any strangers on your way home? I didn't. Sorry. I was in after that. My father, she nodded toward the sleeping old man, can't be left alone for any length of time. Jimmy leaned forward. Hattie James, the student from the dig, said that Mima was a bit put out when you found that piece of human skull. Jackie waved a dismissive hand. It was nothing. She was quite possessive of her land. That's all. Mima never liked people digging up the past. Speaking of the past, Jimmy said, his eyes scanning the photographs on the mantelpiece. One black and white picture caught his eye. It showed 2 young men in thick woolen sweaters standing on the deck of a small, battered fishing boat. Is that your father, Jackie? And Jerry Wilson, Mima's husband? Andrew Holdan suddenly stirred, his milky eyes fixing on Jimmy. The Shetland boss, the old man wheezed. Yes, Mr. Holdan, Jimmy said respectfully. During the war, local boats, Andrew whispered, his mind slipping back 60 years. We were used to transport saboteurs into Norway, across the North Sea in the dead of winter, hiding from the Nazi patrols. Brave men, Jimmy acknowledged. Jerry Wilson was a good man, Andrew said, his voice gaining a momentary strength. But he brought back more than just refugees. He brought back ghosts. Jackie quickly stepped in, her face tight. Don't forget your pills, Dad. I took them already. Come now. You're tired. She effectively ended the interview, ushering Jimmy toward the door. As he stepped out into the freezing air, Jimmy couldn't shake the feeling that the past was bleeding heavily into the present. A human skull, a WWII covert operation, a murdered old woman. The pieces were there, but the puzzle picture was obscured by a heavy Shetland fog. Chapter 8, Boiling Point. The rest of the day was a grueling blur of paperwork, coordinating search teams, and dealing with the press. The murder of an elderly woman on a small island was headline news across Scotland. By the time Jimmy got home, the sky was pitch black and the wind was howling a mournful tune around the eaves of his house. He found Cassie in the kitchen, sitting cross-legged on the counter, watching a pot of water boil. "I'm making pasta," Jimmy announced, shrugging off his coat and rolling up his sleeves. He grabbed a box of dry spaghetti and a jar of sauce. Cassie watched him with a critical eye. Mom was right. Cooking's all about timing, and you don't have it. "I have excellent timing," Jimmy lied, dumping the pasta into the water without waiting for a rolling boil. "1 minute. I don't know why you don't just let me cook," she sighed, hopping off the counter. "Because I like cooking." "Well, that may be, but you're rubbish at it. Pasta should be served al dente." "Oh, is that right? Well, use that al fresco tone if you like, but you're eating it." Jimmy smiled, trying to inject some normalcy into the house. The shadow of Mima Wilson's death hung heavy over him. Cassie picked at the label on the pasta sauce jar. "Can I go over to Maury's after dinner?" Jimmy stopped stirring. The image of Mima's shattered door flashed in his mind. No. "Why?" Cassie whined. "It's Friday." "Because it's late. It's getting dark, and..." Jimmy paused, trying to find the right words that wouldn't terrify her. "And there's an active investigation going on." "You mean there's a killer on the loose?" Cassie said it bluntly. Children in Shetland grew up pragmatic. "In fact, until this Mima Wilson business is over, I don't want you going anywhere on your own," Jimmy said firmly.